Hi, I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're here for the People's Budget Community Meeting to prepare our testimony to the City Council at the Budget Committee's first and only public hearing. I want to thank people for joining. We have a really exciting agenda to prepare us for these people's budget demands, which I will go over very shortly. But I first want to also just recognize and offer a congratulations. I know many of us watching and those of us presenting also today were part of the huge tax Amazon victory that our movement, that ordinary people by the hundreds and in reality by the thousands just won, where we have successfully taxed Amazon and the biggest businesses in Seattle $240 million per year to fund social housing and other basic needs. And obviously, this is a victory for the movement, but it's also a victory for the Black Lives Matter movement. It wouldn't have happened without 20,000 signatures that were gathered in 20 days that made up the bulk of the 30,000 signatures, which really put the pressure on the Democratic establishment to pass a significant tax on big business. And in reality, 4 or 5 times bigger than the one that they shamefully repealed just a few years ago. And being a Black Lives Matter victory, obviously the energy around that victory as a movement, we want to immediately transfer to the key demands of the movement. And of course, we know that the biggest one that is just resonating fully throughout the country and in the city, of course, also is the demand to defund the SPD. And so, when we're talking about these demands, we are talking about defunding the SPD by at least 50% and using those funds instead to support community programs, especially programs for youth of color. Additionally to that, and we're going to hear from speakers to talk about defunding the police, we also want to build immediately 1,000 homes in the Central District for working class African American people to live, fighting against the gentrification that has, of course, decimated the Black community in the Central District for years. We want to fight in the people's budget this year to fund Green New Deal. And of course, we know that Mayor Durkan has come out with an austerity budget calling on cuts from whether it's roads, parks, libraries, other basic public services. We want to say no to austerity for working people. We want to tax big business to fund community needs. And of course, we want to defund the police, take it out of that apparatus that the state uses to maintain inequality, to maintain their private property of Jeff Bezos and other wealthy people. We want to take it away from the police and put it to community. Also, as we know, COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on working people across the city, across the country, and in particular, renters. We have a very brief temporary moratorium on evictions. But once those end, we are going to see a wave of evictions unless we organize and unless we fight. So this people's budget is also about funding eviction defense and about funding renter organizing, which is so critical to prevent what we know will be a wave of evictions if we don't. And lastly, I'm going to very quickly move on to the speakers for today, but I also want to talk about the critical demand that the people's budget movement has fought on for years to stop the sweeps of homeless encampments and to fund tiny house villages. In reality, it was the first people's budget movement in 2014, which won the first authorization and the first funding for authorized encampments for homeless people. We want this year to fund 10 new tiny house villages this year and an additional 10 next year to address the emergency homelessness crisis that we're facing. But of course, all these demands are nice, but unless we have a strategy for how we're going to win these demands, it doesn't add up to actual change. So talking about how we win these demands is equally important, and that's also a big part of the people's budget movement. Obviously, the movement around George Floyd has opened up possibilities to actually win major gains around defunding the police, but that energy can easily dissipate. And in reality, the establishment is desperate to try to bring in things that will delay any real change, that will let this movement's energy dissipate so that they can just let it all float away with pretty words about Black Lives Matter, about disbanding the police, about budgets that include community. But unless we actually see a transfer of money from the SPD to community, unless we see millions for 1,000 homes in the Central District, for Green New Deal, for Eviction Defense, for stopping the sweeps and funding tiny house villages, it doesn't amount to much. So to that end, we're here today to prepare our first people's budget intervention in this process during the public hearing. And we're going to begin actually before we hear from our amazing lineup of speakers, which includes Reverend Robert Jeffries, who's senior pastor at New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. If you participated in these community meetings, you might already have heard from him. A reverend in the Central District who's fought around the demand for 1,000 homes there. We're going to hear from Black Lives Matter activists and defund SPD activists, Teal Sean Turner and Tristan Spears. We're going to hear from Sean Smith, who is speaking as a resident of Nicholsville, who is actually participant in the first victory that we won that I just talked about in 2014. We're going to hear from Tran Larson from the Housing Justice Project about the need to fund lawyers so that we can fight evictions, so that every renter has access to an attorney when fighting evictions. Violet Lavatai, the executive director of the Tenants Union of Washington State, is also going to talk about the need to fund renter organizing, as will Maya Garfinkel from Be Seattle and Cancel Rent Washington. So we're going to hear from several community activists, organizers to give life to these people's budget demands in just a moment. But before we go to that, I'm going to ask community organizer and Councilmember Shama Sawant's office, Nick Jones, to show us exactly how to sign up for public comment. If you haven't already signed up for public comment, please do that now. It really matters the extent to which City Council hears from ordinary people, hears from people saying, I'm from the People's Budget Movement and I need you to do this, this, this. It matters. So again, I want to thank everybody on behalf of Councilmember Shama Sawant. She is going to try to attend later on in the meeting, although unfortunately she's unwell, and she will be at, of course, the public hearing. So she offers her apologies that she can't attend right now. But without further ado, let's hear from Nick real briefly so that everybody who's watching can please go ahead. If you haven't already, sign up to public comment. And Nick, would you show people how to do that?
Yes, thank you, Adam. Oh, let's get rid of that. So yeah, folks, hopefully some folks have done this before, but super easy. And with today's public hearing, you should definitely sign up still. To be able to sign up for public comment, folks are going to want to find this web page. It's be a little tricky to find, but how I always do it is just typing in Seattle public comment into whatever search bar I'm using. You can just do that. It should be the top search result generally at the seattle.gov URL. Just go ahead and click there. And now that the sign up form is live, you should be able to scroll down past these instructions and you'll find this form, this public comment sign up form. You're going to want to fill this out in its entirety, especially here in the email address, whatever email address you put in here, that is where they'll send the link to sign up and speak from, to call into the public comment. And whatever phone number you put on here, you'll want to use your real phone number. That's how they'll identify folks when they're calling the roll off on public comment. So definitely fill it out as a whole. Click this. You'll want to, you can type really anything in here, defunding SPD, people's budget, whatever you want to speak to. You'll hit submit and you should receive an email back at the address you put in. And yeah, everyone should definitely sign up. You should be able to have some time to speak. And yeah, even if you have to go do something before your name gets called, still even seeing all the people signed up helps create immense pressure on the city council to, pass the people's budget, feel heat from our movement. So I'll stop there and kick it back to Adam.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for showing us how to sign up like that. And just to emphasize, this is just the first opportunity to directly make our demands to the city council budget committee, which is the full city council, but it's just the first. We're going to be having to continue to pressure city council. Just to give an idea, the tax Amazon victory, which is of course humongous, $240 million per year, that took more than 2 years to win. And I don't have time to go into all the ways that the establishment fought hard against that, against our movement to prevent that victory. But when we're talking about defunding the SPD by at least 50%, we're talking about $200 million transferring from the ruling class, from the powers that be, to ordinary working people, and especially communities of color. So they will be loath to give that away, and we're going to require the same level of organization, political clarity, and pressure on the city council if we hope to win that. So in order to, as I was saying, give life to that pressure, let's go and hear right now from one of the primary activists in reality in the tax Amazon movement throughout these 2 years, Reverend Robert Jeffrey, to talk about the demands to tax Amazon, but how they relate to the people's budget and fighting gentrification in the Central District. So Reverend Robert Jeffrey, if you could take it from here.
Thank you. It's just good to be here, and Adam and everybody that's online. I think that, like you said, it's going to be a struggle, but we have to be in it. We have to be in it for that struggle. I think it's imperative that we do the housing as well as defund the police. So I'm a part of this movement, and I think that going forward, I think we just have to let everybody know that these are not issues that we're going to just let fall by the wayside. We're going to keep the pressure on, and I think keeping the pressure on is the most important thing right now. Keeping the pressure up. The New Hope Church that I pastor has been a part of this whole struggle for a long time, and I'm dedicated, as well as the people around here are dedicated to keeping the pressure up and keeping the movement going. So defund the police is a part of what we are pushing for, as well as we are partners with some of the tiny houses, which are very vital to getting people off the street. I mean, all of these things are just crucial, and we just have to keep pressing until people understand how crucial this is. We've got to press the corporations, which we're thankful for that victory, and now we got to protect it, because I'm sure they're gonna. One thing about the system, it always is able to come back. It's always able to try to undo what has been done, and so we're gonna be careful about that. But yeah, I think it's just an ongoing press and an ongoing struggle. And like I was telling Adam before, I'm in it, to win it. I mean, we're in it for the long haul. And I think that all of these elements are crucial to keeping our community vital. And I know that the whole thing about people moving to the east, moving to Bellevue, and that's the fear tactic that they're using now, people leaving and moving. But the bottom line is, this is everywhere. This is not going to just stop in Seattle. I mean, the driving people out of their homes is going to happen wherever this kind of consciousness goes. And so you're going to still have homeless. You're still going to have the people who are dispossessed. So, I mean, if you move, wherever you move it, you're going to still have these same set of problems. So we can't be deterred by those fear tactics that were and somehow contributing to that. I think that people can't run from this. This is everywhere, and we just have to keep the momentum up. So I'm just glad to be here, Adam, and to really emphasize the housing part of it and the need to get people back into their community, and to restore land that has been taken from countless numbers of individuals, even New Hope Church. So I've got a call at 3:30, so I'm not gonna be able to stay the full time, but I'll try to get back after the call.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Jeffrey, for your words here, but then also for just your really inspiring activism. And just to punctuate this point, this demand for 1,000 homes to the central, to build housing in the central area has the support now of, I believe, well over 200 faith leaders.
Yeah. It has Angela Ying can talk about that a little bit better than I can, but we have over 200 faith leaders who have signed on to this initiative, and they are ready and prepared to struggle for this. And I also want to talk about decreasing the police budget by 50%. I mean, we're on that too. I mean, we think all of this has to happen. All of this has to happen. All of this is imperative. I mean, we just have a police force that's out of control. And the only way you're going to get that under control is to trim that budget and to put in controls. We need a civilian review board, not that thing they got now, but we need a true review board that is able to have community support. It's able to deal with the police. Those are issues that we got to deal with. We're going to have the same situation just in a few months. I mean, there's going to be another shooting. I mean, if we don't move on this, they're not going to stop. They've been doing it ever since I've been here. The first funeral I did was a young man who was shot with a television tuner in his hand. He came through the door, no knock. He raised up and they killed him. And they went in the wrong house. So, I mean, it's been going on over and over again. So we just got to stop that. And the only way we can do that is to attack the budget and get a review board in that community endorses.
Well, thank you so much. And that's a really powerful segue actually to our next participant in this community watch party, which again is, aimed at providing us with the ammunition, so to speak, to most effectively pressure city council for the people's demands, but in reality, the demands of the George Floyd movement, and most among them, the demand to defund the Seattle Police Department by at least 50%. And Reverend Jeffrey is right. We're only going to win this if we build a powerful movement. Our next speaker, Teal Sean Turner, has a lot of experience over the past several weeks in building this movement. He's been on the front lines at the Justice for George Floyd protests, at the CHOP protests. She's a member of Labor's Local 242, and she has already participated in a handful of community meetings, so people might also be familiar with her powerful words. But let's hear from Teal Sean, why we need to defund the SPD. What are some of the things that it can be used for in the community, especially for communities, the Black community, communities of color, and then of course, how can we win this big fight? So Teal Sean, take it away.
So my name is Teal Sean Turner, and I definitely support defunding the police by at least 50%. And I definitely do support the people's budget too, because let's look at the mayor's proposed budget. She's talking $20 million a year. That's what, a 5% cut? How much is that really gonna do for them? How much is that really gonna change how they brutalize and harass and kill people in these Black communities? That's not enough. It's not enough to just say, oh, we're gonna take $20 million a year from you guys and still leave you with $390 million to have free range with. No. You take that $200 million to half of their budget and you invest back into Black and brown communities, which invests into the people's budget, because the people's budget has the ability to take that money and use it to build affordable housing for Black and brown communities, or build more tiny homes for the homeless. Because let's be real, homelessness in Seattle has been real for about 50 years. We've had this problem for about 50 years. And like I've been saying this whole time, 2020 is the year of change. So let's change that. Let's let this be the year that we change that with the people's budget. So that way we defund SPD by 50%. We got the Amazon tax. and now we have to get the police money because that money from Amazon and the police can actually potentially solve our homelessness problem, because you can build more tiny homes and you can build all these affordable housings for other people, and then you can take some of these empty spaces and turn them into shelters or safe places for homeless people. You know, there's so much you can do with all these empty lots, all these empty buildings, that money can, you take that money from the police and you build these buildings up, you invest in those communities, and then you have a problem, you have a situation where now you have all this land, you have all this property, because Black equity matters. Let's not get that misconstrued. Black equity matters. You can't say Black lives matter without having Black equity behind it. So by doing this, by taxing Amazon and defunding the police, you are taking that money and investing back into Black equity, because when you invest in these Black communities, you're investing in the equity of those communities, which means you're investing in the equity of Black people. And why wouldn't you want to? If everybody says all lives matter, okay, if all lives matter, then why are Black people and brown people and indigenous people the only ones treated unfairly if all lives matter? You know? So I'm definitely behind supporting the people's budget and defunding the police by at least 50%. I've been on the front lines. We've been leading protests every day, and we know what it's like out there. We've had Seattle police officers, literally off-duty one, literally run through us. And SPD did nothing about it. They didn't arrest her. They didn't do anything, even though they had all the proof they needed. And that goes to show you why we still need to be out here, why we still need to be beating our feet to the streets every day. Shows you why we need to put pressure on the council members to get this stuff done, because SPD hasn't changed not one bit since this thing has started. And I've seen it time and time again out there on the front lines protesting. I've seen it time and time again. SPD has not changed, not one little bit. So maybe by defunding them by at least 50%, you take half of their money, you take half of their power, which is fine with me, because money equals power in this country. Money equals power. You take the money from them, you take the power from them, and you put it back into the people. It's just like the Reverend said, we need actual civilian review boards, because the Office of Professional Accountability is a joke. They've had well over 15,000 complaints since the George Floyd uprising in Seattle, and not one of them has been looked at, taken care of, or anything. So that OPA is a joke as of right now. We definitely need a civilian oversight board that's actually a civilian oversight board that has nothing to do with the police or nothing to do with any of that, that don't have political stakes or any of that, because if you get rid of one establishment just to replace it with another one, we're gonna keep having the same problems we're having now. We are. And it's just, history repeats itself. History has shown us time and time again, when you try to change things and replace it with something that seems better, but it's not, history is bound to repeat itself. So if you defund SPD by 50% and support the people's budget, that gives us some leeway to have history not repeat itself in Seattle. That gives us ways to make stuff work here.
Thank you so much, Teal Sean. And yeah, definitely agree that the money that currently $400 million is spent on the Seattle Police Department could be put to much better use in the community. And all the statistics show that bloated police departments do not lead to more safety, especially not for community of color and Black and brown people. But statistics do show that investing in community, providing jobs, housing, basic needs and services dramatically impacts public safety and crime. And so we want to actually do what is proven to benefit ordinary people in our communities. But again, the Democratic establishment is loath to do that without a big fight. And another person who's been on the front lines of this fight is Tristan Spears, been active in the Black Lives Matter movement, active at CHOP. Let's hear from Tristan, of course, why we need to defund SPD and what that could be used for, but also how could we do that by the need to focus our energies at the point where the decisions to fund or not fund, to transfer the money or not transfer are made. So Tristan, if you could take it from here, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just wanted to enlighten a little bit more about what you said and just talking about where that money should go. One thing that needs to be enlightened and highlighted and
Can't hear you, Tristan.
Tristan, we can't hear you right now.
I couldn't hear you, Adam. But in the case of the support from the Black community behind this, it's like, and if you look at the raging fire, and sometimes nature has to run its course and you can't do nothing about it but let it burn itself out. And in regards to this is barely starting to warm up. And I'm sure that people are beginning to feel the heat of the summer. So we will do everything this day and night that we have to continue to be our feet in the streets so that people see us and they feel the pressure until we get that pen to hit the paper and get some actual reform. We're trying to seek reform because in a system like this that wasn't designed to help us, it won't serve us. So trying to seek justice in the system's repetitive. We're just going to keep throwing stuff against the wall and look crazy in the end because this system was not set. Putting that money into the Black community where it belongs. I mean, since we were the ones taken out of this community, you know, taxing Amazon was a huge victory. We got 4 times more than we expected to 2 years ago. And I mean, that goes to show that this is more crucial at this point during COVID, especially with, you know, the homeless populations increasing at this point in time. And after we have, you know, this is almost to the point where they're getting ready to start evicting people. You can only imagine what'll happen at that point. We have to stop putting the profit over the people and instead put the profit back into those people that have been overlooked by society for so long. Otherwise, you know, a community is only as strong as its weakest link. And if we're not together as a community and there serves no unity, we're not together. And right now, this movement has brought a lot of people together in the community and that's amazing because that's the Seattle that I grew up in. And it's really starting to show. So for all those people that are doubting that, you know, I see new faces every day out here. And it's a beautiful thing because it goes to show like the amount of support we have. It's crazy. Like just people throw themselves at us asking what they can do to help. People buy us food every night on our marches. Like it's crazy the amount of support. The people that come out there to actually see what's going on instead of just question what the media has to say. It goes to show that they actually care because they're coming out. So for all those people that don't think that there's pressure, I mean, pressure busts pipes. Imagine what it'll do to the brain. But we've united and brought it to this point and this far here in Seattle. I mean, you got to think that our movement was able to get those gases banned before anybody else, which gives us an advantage here in Seattle to a degree as far as what our movement supports and applying that pressure in these streets. I mean, it makes it that much safer. Not saying that they can't be used against us, but as opposed to other cities that are going through it every day that are being gassed and maced constantly, we got an advantage against our police department because again, they have to have immediate threat for life, which of course could be somebody playing rap music too loud. But again, that gives us a little bit more cause to be out here because again, obviously what we're doing is making that pen hit the paper in City Hall, thanks to Shama and her organization. I mean, we owe a lot to that movement. But other than people not understanding the whole entirety of how things came about, I mean, from the moment at Westlake where it all started, it's been to this point, we've gotten so far, a lot of them got the pressure because after COVID is over, I mean, if we don't have our homeless issues addressed after this, I mean, immediately before this is over, it needs to be addressed because those at the bottom that are going to be affected, those people at the bottom, I guarantee you, those effects will ripple into the top. So all those people that are greedy with their money and their corporations that don't care about us, they're going to feel the effects of what they've caused if we don't take the money and put it towards the use ourselves, because we obviously have a better sense of what to do with it and what direction it should go towards the community for the people. And if we don't handle these issues now, I mean, you can only imagine about people claiming that Seattle was dying pre-COVID. Imagine what they'll think of Seattle post-COVID. So it's just essential that we continue to keep the pressure and, you know, put the money back into the Black community where it goes. Remember that the civil rights movement was led by Black people, but it was followed by a majority of our allies, and that's what brought the pressure together, was everybody coming together. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten that 64 Act passed if it wasn't for the majority of those people following behind the Black leadership. I mean, you know, this country was built on the backs of blacks. We can go to the first person who died for the Revolutionary War, Atticus. That was an African gentleman. So I mean, every time you look back, it's always black people saving this country. I mean, when they wanted to take guns away, they blame black people for that in California. So we can just look at the effects that we have and the power we have, but most importantly, the position we have here in Seattle. That's the key fundamental. If we want to make history, it's going to be made here in Seattle first. If we look back in history again at the '99 WTO riots, those definitely stopped the economy for a second. So again, if the power is going to start, it's going to start here. We have the opportunity to make the differences and make the change. It's just about keeping this pressure up, telling a friend, word of mouth, making sure that we all stay committed, keeping it in the streets, showing up to these meetings, and making sure that we call in every chance. We got to wake up early in the morning just to make that phone call. Do it. What else do you have to? What else do you have to do? What's more important? Like that old commercial goes: you're sitting there on the couch, your life's passing me by. Just make the call. Just make the call. Wake up and just go ahead and handle business, so we can go ahead and continue to make these changes. Because again, it's now or never, and that's what's going on. So continue to fight, everybody. Love y'all.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for really emphasizing the need to struggle and to point our energy, the energy of this movement, which has opened up so many possibilities. And it's really critical, as Tristan noted, is it's not a coincidence that it's the Black Lives Matter movement, which has just exploded and has almost single-handedly opened up all of this possibility for, in addition to other stuff, $200 million to be taken from the SPD and put into community. And I know that Teal Sean will be, addressing the city council starting at 4 o'clock. I know Tristan will as well, and so as many of the people watching as possible are also going to make that call. This people's budget movement is about bringing ordinary people like me, like Tristan, like Teal Sean, like Reverend Jeffrey into the city, into City Hall at the exact time when the establishment wants people to be outside of City Hall. And that's during the budget when the actual money is transferred. And it's no coincidence that it's really, really hard to participate. I mean, who knows about going onto the seattle.gov website and signing up for public comment? Who knows about calling the Seattle Council to make our demands? We don't know about that, but that's why we're, most of the times as working people, we don't know about that. But that's the importance of the people's budget movement, to bring ordinary people inside City Hall. Councilmember Shama Sawan is, we long consider ourselves the movement inside City Hall. So we're really excited when, the movement, which is really what wins things, what won the tax Amazon struggle, what has opened up possibilities to win a lot in this year. That's what's going to change things. But it always helps, of course, and it's necessary to have fighters inside City Hall like Councilmember Sawan. I want to go next, and I think it's really important that Tristan and Teal Sean and Reverend Jeffrey linked, the need to defund the SPD with the need to fund community. And among that is housing. And then within that, of course, is the houseless community, the homeless community, which we know, alongside just magnificent wealth, absurd wealth here in the city. We've got more than 12,000 people living on the streets. Sean Smith, as I've noted, he's been active in this people's budget movement since it began. And let's hear from Sean about the people's budget movement demand to fund tiny house villages, self-managed tiny house villages, among other things, and stop the sweeps, of course, as well. So Sean, go ahead and tell us about some of that stuff.
There we go. Can you hear me? My name is Sean Smith, and I reside at Nicholsville Tiny House Village. Our community is made up of homeless men and women banding together in a tiny house village. They're healthier and safer than the large mass-based shelters of the past. Instead of crowding hundreds of people into one room trying to sleep about a foot apart, at Nicholsville, each person has a tiny house with privacy, security, and electricity. Moreover, it's a place to shelter things like the pandemic. There were several thousand tiny house villages. There wouldn't be any justification for the mayor's cool sweeps of homeless people. people would freely choose from tiny houses with safety and sanitary facilities. When Nicholsville started a decade ago, in response to Mayor Nichols' sweeps of homeless encampment, the mayor tried to sweep us. Mayor Jenny hasn't given up on that. Right now, my tiny house village at North Lake is on city land that would otherwise be unused. And the neighbors are okay with us. Mayor Durkan, though, is still threatening to have us swept this summer. She'd rather sweep a sanctioned encampment like ours, share a plan with homeless people's organization. And that is even though the new encampments ordinance that Shama makes better this last year allows for 40 homeless encampments on public land in Seattle. Nicholsville wants to be on this list. Please call Mayor Durkan and tell her to apply the law fairly. You know, Nicholsville has supported the demands that the SPD budget be defunded. You know, we support healthcare and social services based in community-led organizations. And we also are calling for a non-prosecution of the protesters who have placed themselves on the front lines to demand change and better from our city. We oppose, sweeps of unsanctioned encampments. Nicholsville and our brothers and sisters of SHARE are also part of the Tax Amazon campaign, which was essential in helping pass this historic head tax bill yet again that the city council so deviously last year cut. It was unprecedented. You know, with an additional $200 million to what we have now, we could build housing and we could shelter everybody in the city. It's ridiculous to militarize the police who are used to push people down and brutally enforce unjust laws and unsanctioned encampments. You know, for every homeless person in America, there's at least 3 empty housing units sitting vacant. One reason of this is that our system of law enforcement, which favors elites' property rights over human rights, the power that have deliberately created police forces are happy to concentrate on protecting property rights instead of human rights. This is why Nicholsville is on the record for blocking the North Seattle Police bunker. We're on the record for opposing funding for a new jail. After decades of struggle, in the last month, people of color communities, Seattle have mobilized themselves and allies to bring historic racism of the police to a crucial tipping point. It's a remarkable achievement. We salute you, and we're with you in this struggle. Let's move forward together and change the world for the better. Thanks, Adam.
All right, Sean, thank you so much for those really powerful words. We've got also, I just got a report from council staff, Shama's staff that's in the budget committee. We just heard that the head of Mayor Durkan's budget team, and it's not a direct quote, but basically says, quote, I understand that council just passed a revenue package, but that is totally insufficient to cover the budget shortfalls to come. And there will be very unpleasant choices to make. So when Sean talks about property rights over human rights, we know what they're talking about when the unpleasant choices that they're going to make. It's Mayor Durkan saying to the departments that actually employ working people and address working people's needs. Those are what's on the chopping block. It's not corporations' profits. It's not, oh, let's increase the Amazon tax, which of course is a major victory, but we all know that Amazon is $1 trillion company and the 3% biggest businesses, they could pay a lot more, but that's not the unpleasant choice that Ben Noble, the budget director, and Mayor Durkan are talking about. And of course, we also know that they're not talking about genuine defunding of the Seattle Police Department, whose budget, if I'm not mistaken, is bloated by more than 40% in just the last several years. They're not talking about those difficult decisions. They're talking about attacking working people. And actually the people's budget movement, before we move on to the critical question of fighting for renters' rights, and our next speaker, the people's budget movement has a powerful track record of fighting against attacks by the ruling class and turning them into big victories. When the Mayor Murray proposed a $160 million bunker in North Seattle, what would have been the most expensive police precinct in the entire continent, a powerful movement, mainly of young Black activists, rose up and forced the council, and together with Shama Sawan, our city council office, we were able to block that bunker. And during the budget process, we said, block the bunker, build 1,000 homes. Now, our movement wasn't powerful enough to win the full 160 million for 1,000 homes. We were powerful enough to win 29 million that went to permanently affordable housing. This year, with the weight of the George Floyd protest, the Black Lives Matter movement, if we're organized, united, as Teal, Sean, and Tristan emphasized, then the prospect of winning significant defunding, $200 million at least from the Seattle Police Department to community, is on the order of the day. But again, the Tax Amazon movement was a 2-year-plus struggle, and it required a lot of organization and a lot of fight. So it's not going to be an easy battle. It's going to be an uphill battle. But of course, as Tristan and Teal Sean have indicated, there's a lot of people who are willing and ready to fight. As we've noted earlier, the question of renters being attacked by the fact that COVID-19 has forced so many people out of work and cut people's pay so significantly. You know, there's news stories all around about, I believe, CBS or CNBC, I forget which one, you know, said the eviction apocalypse will be upon us. So let's hear some organizers, some activists, some people working in renters' defense to talk about the need to build this people's budget movement, of course, to defund the SPD, of course, to invest millions in housing for homeless people, but also to fight on behalf of renters, which make up the majority of our city and our working people, ordinary working people. So without further ado, let's hear from Tran Larson from the Housing Justice Project to talk about the need to fund attorneys so that renters have an ability to defend themselves when they're facing eviction. Tram, can we hear from you now?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Tram. I am not an attorney at HJP. I work on our home-based program. So that's, you know, eviction prevention, one-time emergency rental assistance. And so we at HJP, you know, we fully support defunding the police by at least 50%. That's a lot of money that can go into emergency rental assistance because, like everybody else, HJP is just bracing for, you know, the eviction apocalypse. Like, we have tenants who are still calling us. We went remote like everybody else, and we have a hotline set up, and we're still getting calls from people who are getting threats from their landlord, who are getting notices, even with the moratorium right in effect. And landlords are clever. They're finding ways around it. We are now seeing tenants that are being evicted for safety and health reasons. And it's not, the bar isn't very high for landlords. You know, we had a tenant who was evicted last month because the landlord claimed that they were producing methamphetamine with zero proof that our client specifically was producing methamphetamine. And so the courts are already not, you know, ruling in favor of tenants. I can only imagine how much worse it's going to get as soon as that moratorium lifts. We have folks who are going to owe tens of thousands of dollars. And I don't know of a single agency in this county or even in the state that has the capacity and the funding to help keep those people housed. And I mean, at the end of the day, housing is a racial justice issue. Like, we know that evictions affect, you know, the Black community, especially. We don't even really see a lot of Indigenous folks come through. And so that's a huge problem as well. they're so often left out of these conversations on race, equity, and things like that. Yeah, in our Kent clinic, we see a lot of immigrant families, folks who don't speak English, and there's no right to counsel. There's no guaranteed interpreter. We can't even get interpreters anymore at HJP when we're talking to our clients. The court will only supply them on the day of hearings, and that's assuming that an interpreter is even available. So from the get-go, tenants are already, have the odds stacked against them. And that's just magnified for our Black community. I mean, most of our tenants are being evicted for 1 month or less. And a lot of them are single Black moms, young Black folks, Black youth. Like this, we need to take that money from the police budget and really invest it in housing. We need more homes. We need affordable homes. And we really need to prevent evictions. Otherwise, like the pandemic is just going to get worse, right? If we send people into homelessness, like you're removing that safety. How can they quarantine? How can they stay home and stay healthy if they don't have a home to begin with?
Right. Thank you so much, Tram. I really appreciate your contribution. And yeah, just to note, the Housing Justice Project, we've worked now the last 2 years in the People's Budget movement to fund attorneys so that renters have a right, as a basic right to a defense when they're facing such a life-shattering process, which we know, even if you're found, that the eviction is not warranted, it still stays on your record and can hamper you for years and years to come. So we've fought the last 2 years. Housing Justice Project has told Councilmember Sawant that with $600,000, that's 6 attorneys that could provide this service to every renter facing eviction. And each year, the city council, we had a movement. It was strong enough not to win 6. They nickeled and dimed it. The first year they nickeled and dimed it down from 6 to 1, if you can imagine. This is out of a billions-dollar budget, and you take, $100,000 for renters defense. Last year, down from 6 to 2. This year, it's likely, with the wave of evictions coming, going to require far more. And we want to build a far bigger movement so that we win the full funding for eviction defense. Let's go ahead and hear now from Violet Lavatai, the Executive Director of the Tenants Union of Washington State, about the need to also fund organizing for renters and, of course, other aspects of this People's Budget movement. So go ahead, Violet. Please take it from here.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, everyone. I am with the Tenants Union of Washington, and we advocate for tenants' rights. It's true. We're bracing for a lot of evictions that are going to happen in August when the moratorium ends. We're hoping our letters and outreach to the governor to extend it further beyond this. Right now, a lot of the tenant organizing funding should be to organize, but I also want to speak on funding to Housing Justice Project to brace themselves for the many tenants, if the moratorium doesn't extend past August 1st, that they're going to see a lot of tenants in the city of Seattle come to them for help, or in Kent. As we work with different tenants, lot of, I always share this, the highest rate of eviction in our state right now is Black African Americans. And we want to change the narrative on that. What we want to do is, people ask me, what's the root of homelessness? It's racial and discriminatory behaviors that have been set up for years. And so what we want to do as we advocate for tenants, a lot of tenants come to us, and we're talking about marginalized, vulnerable communities. We are not lawyers by any means, but we are tenant advocates. We organize to change things up in our legislations and everything like that. We're asking the governor not to, the mayor of Seattle not to just talk about impacting and having conversations about investing back into the Black communities. What we're asking is action right now, is to support everything that the Black community has put forth, investing back into the communities by supporting all of the properties, the things that they're asking for. That's taking action. I think what we want to see now is not a lot of talk. I think all of us do want to come to the table and talk about the discriminatory bad behavior that police have done by killing Black citizens of our nation and even in the world. What we want to do now is get that money to defund the police, is not having a huge, nice police station. The thing is, that money should be invested back into the community. I'm a firm believer of right now talking about the Black community. A lot of our cases, a lot of my cases right now are coming in are Black citizens, and the outrageous behaviors these landlords are putting, the Black tenants in distress. And that, I'm talking about everyone. And so what we want to do is support tenant organizing to unite all tenants to fight about these unjust laws that are in place against the tenants. I can tell you this, looking at all these landlord ordinances and RCWs, it's a landlord friendly court system that has been put upon us. And we want to change the narrative to have more tenant protection, tenant organizing, that they have the right to stand up in their community. And so this budget, and congratulations on all the hard work that all the advocates has done, is taxing Amazon. And this is the time that this money will go back into the community. It's not just to win a fight. This is it's a win for the people. And we're so happy that we get to be a part of this. This is changing history, is making these rich people, these rich billionaires, be accountable and pay their fair share of taxes. That's what it's all about. And so, I can go on and on, but thank you, Adam, for this opportunity. And I think we are doing the right thing by banding still together and coming together and really holding this mayor accountable for this budget. Thank you, Adam.
Well, thank you so much, Violet. And also just want to extend a real note of appreciation of Violet and the Tenants Union for their work in the Tax Amazon movement from the start. We've got one more speaker. We're about 6 minutes out from the budget meeting, when people, will show people how to get onto the actual Seattle channel. So let's go to Maya Garfinkel from Cancel Rent Washington to talk again about renter organizing, and then we'll come back and just in a real quick 2 or 3 minutes reiterate our demands as a people's budget movement, and then people can go and speak truth to power in a way that's powerful, hopefully, as the speakers here on this meeting. So Maya, go ahead and take it.
Hi, I'm Maya Garfinkel, a tenant organizer with B Seattle. B Seattle does tenant and houseless organizing and advocacy through a variety of workshops, programming, and direct building organizing. We're currently, like many others here, are running on a shoestring budget during a global pandemic whose financial and health impacts are disproportionately hurting renters and our houseless neighbors the most. B Seattle is currently focused on delivering care kits to folks experiencing houselessness and running weekly Know Your Rights and introductory tenant organizing workshops every week. We have a tenant rights boot camp tonight at 6:30 p.m. Someone should be sending you a link to that. But we believe that knowing your rights as renters is the first step to organizing with your neighbors and fighting for better protections and greater renter power. We're also, as Adam mentioned, helping to build a no debt, no evictions campaign, emphasizing that housing is healthcare. We also unequivocally support the demands of King County Equity Now, Decriminalize Seattle, and other groups calling for defunding SPD at least 50%, along with a list of other visionary demands. And as many others have said, we need a people's budget with no austerity, which invests in permanently affordable, cooperatively run housing that prioritizes people over landlords. We need the city to invest in housing to ensure that people of color, particularly Black folks who have been disproportionately hurt by Seattle and our country's racist history of redlining, restrictive covenants, and current gentrification and housing discrimination. The people who care for our communities are not pushed out by the city by speculative development and rent gouging. We need the city council to call on the governor to cancel all rent, mortgages, and all related debt for the entirety of the pandemic. We also, as Violet has said, we need to invest in tenant organizing because, as you all know, the imbalance of power is huge to fight landlord interests. So yeah, we need you to tell our city council to invest in social housing and fund tenant organizing. We need to fight against the wealthy's control of our city because we fight for and take care of each other. And today we're doing so by demanding housing as healthcare, fund tenant organizing, and to listen to Black leaders' demands and defund SPD. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Maya, for those really powerful words. And yeah, why don't we go ahead and, I want to thank all the speakers one more time. I want to thank everybody who's watching, and especially the people who are going right over to speak to City Council. I want to put one thing on people's agendas. This Monday at 6 p.m., July 13th, that's a People's Budget Organizing meeting. This is the first and only public hearing, but there's going to be several more committee meetings and then, of course, votes where we're going to need to make our power felt, and we're going to need to do it in an even bigger way, of course, as the votes get more and more important. So please go ahead and, I just want to reiterate the demands one more time. And again, when we're giving public comment, we of course want to introduce ourselves. We want to tell why we want to, defund the Seattle Police by at least 50%. Build 1,000 homes in the Central District to fight racist gentrification, fund the Green New Deal, stop austerity, no budget cuts to roads, parks, libraries, or other public services. We want to fund renter and eviction defense. And of course, we want to stop the sweeps of homeless encampments and fund tiny house villages. Obviously, people are going to pick and choose which demands are most important, which resonate most with them. We do want to reiterate that the key people's budget demand this year, for obvious reasons, the explosion around George Floyd protests, is to defund the Seattle Police by at least 50%. And if you want to make your contribution that much more powerful, it's always better when council knows that they're part of a united movement that's acting in solidarity with other demands. So saying at the beginning of your contribution that you're from the people's budget movement, and saying that you're at the end of your contribution that you're from the people's budget movement, and these are demands, we're paying attention, we're watching. We will hold you accountable if you vote against community, if you refuse to defund Seattle Police, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll just end, because we're 1 minute out from 4 p.m., by saying if you really want to scare the city council, go ahead and also please thank Councilmember Shama Sawant and the movement as a whole, of course. Shama Sawant, we don't have any power without the movement, but the fact that the movement does have a council member inside City Hall acting on their behalf, giving voice to ordinary people, communities of color in this context, especially during this budget process, that really scares the hell out of the city council members. So without further ado, I'll have the splash screen put up so that we can have people go to the Seattle, go to seattle.gov or the Seattle channel, excuse me, and please, strong people's budget demands to the city council, defund Seattle Police by at least 50%, several other demands, of course. And again, thank you so much for watching. And we will be in contact next Monday, 6 p.m., July 13th. It's the next People's Budget event. It's an organizing meeting to plan out how we're going to win our people's budget and the movement's demands around on these key issues. So thank you so much.